I'm calling the Tuesday, October 15th, 2024 regular meeting to order. The time is 6:10. The meeting is streamed on the village website. The public can also participate via Zoom. Instructions and overall public participation guidance is listed on the website and on page 5 of the meeting packet. The Village of Los Ranchos is providing the ability for the public to participate in hybrid meetings. As with any application, digital service, or software, the opportunity for failure can occur. Therefore, the village is not responsible for the inability to connect to the meeting, either by Zoom meeting, by the Zoom meeting link, or viewing via live stream. The meeting video and audio is recorded and will be available online after the meeting on the village website. I would like to state up front, as required by NMSA 1978, Section 10-15-1J of the New Mexico Open Meetings Act, that the matter discussed in the closed session was limited only to what was specified in the notice. Pursuant to NMSA 1978, Section 10-15-1H7, attorney-client privileged and confidential discussions regarding the litigation between the Village of Los Ranchos and Palindrome Communities, LLC, Palindrome Properties Group, LLC, and Trailhead at Chamasal, LLP, and litigation between the Village of Los Ranchos and Friends of Los Ranchos and Nancy Nangeroni. Pursuant to NMSA 1978, Section 10-15-1H2, limited personnel matters for the discussion of filling vacant positions. Pursuant to NMSA 1978, Section 10-15-1H8, real property for the discussion of acquiring real property. Let me call the roll. Trustee Benavides?
Here.
Trustee Kiefer?
Here.
Trustee Ranovich?
Here.
Trustee Reinau? Okay. Let's stand, please, for the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Is we have, is there a motion to approve, or, excuse me, to approve or amend the agenda?
Yeah, sure. Motion to approve the agenda.
Okay. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay. Any discussion from the governing body?
I have none.
Okay. Let me call the question. Trustee Benavides?
Yes.
Trustee Kiefer?
Yes.
Trustee Radovich?
Yes.
Trustee Rano, yes. Okay, motion carries. Okay, this section, general public comment. Only those participants who signed up prior to the meeting can speak on topics that do not appear on the agenda and will be given 3 minutes to do so. No action can occur on these items. If you have questions, please feel free to contact staff during business hours. Danielle, can you please proceed by calling up individuals that have signed up for general comment?
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem, trustees. Our first individual is Ms. Carrie Peel. If you would, please approach the podium, state your name and address for the record. You have 3 minutes.
All right, my name is Carrie Peel. I live at 616 Bledsoe Road Northwest on Guadalupe Trail. I'm the house with the giant dinosaur. Thank you for having me. And you've seen, yeah, oh, big ups for the dinosaur. Yeah, absolutely. So I'm just coming to talk about the community yard sale, and I just was making sure everybody knew about it. So I'm gonna kind of read from some notes to make sure I get all the details right. So we're gonna have a village community yard sale in the Alfredo Garcia Barn on Sunday, November 17th, between 9 a.m. and ending at noon. And so if you want to sell your gently used furnishings and household goods in good working condition, you're gonna go to the events page on the village website or the village Facebook page and register. And it's super easy to do that. So if you wanna participate or know somebody that does, tell them to register. There's a $20 registration fee that goes towards the Village Community Garden Fund, and you keep everything that you make selling your stuff at the garage sale. There's a limited number of selling spots, so if you are interested or you know somebody that is, encourage them to sign up now. We already have a lot of takers. And if you want to check out the stuff at the garage sale on that Sunday, register on the events, like say you're coming if you want. We're just trying to get a number on how many people to make sure it's an enjoyable event. You can also just show up, that's fine, to browse. So we're gonna support community agriculture. You might meet a new neighbor or someone in the community, support a neighbor and help get some stuff out of your house, shed, or attic. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Jeff Phillips?
Good evening, Jeff Phillips, 605 Schulte Road, Northwest. Mayor Pro Tem, trustees, Administrator Avila. I say this all the time, and I mean it. We live in an amazing place with amazing people. As I mentioned at the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting last week, it seems to me that we're at a high point in community involvement and direct civic engagement, and that's a good thing. So I hope to be a part of continuing that. And you've heard we've taken a couple of walks recently, one at the Del Norte Open Space and one on National Good Neighbor Day. These were wonderful events, truly heartening. Now I'd like to tell you about our next 3 scheduled walks. I encourage anyone who has an idea for a future walk or is interested in leading one to get in touch. And we do have a Gmail account, walklosranchos@gmail.com. The first one is Chavez Road. So next Thursday morning at 8:30, the 24th, we're going to meet at the Villa and walk Chavez Road down to the end, turn around and walk back. It's about 2 miles. And in that, that'll be an opportunity to take some pictures, get to know one another, but also discuss the ins and outs of Chavez Road for potential future conversations. The second walk we have planned is what we're calling Explore Chamizal Lateral, and that is on Saturday, November 9th at 3 p.m. We're gonna meet at Pueblo Solano and 4th Street, go to the lateral, walk south down to Willow, and either turn around and walk straight back up the lateral or come over to 4th and walk up. Again, it's about a 2-mile walk, and this particular walk is the first of a series of 3 on the Chamizal Lateral. So the next will be the middle section, and then the final will be the northernmost section of the Chamizal lateral. And the third walk we have planned, we're calling Walk Off the Stuffing. And this is the day after Thanksgiving, Friday, November 29th, from 8:30 to 10:30 at the Taft Middle School track and field. And that's mainly get together, have coffee, throw a ball, walk a few laps, get to know one another, talk about the holidays, complain about in-laws, et cetera, et cetera. The walks are not the only way to get involved. There's many ways, and I encourage everybody to engage. There's, of course, the yard sale that was just mentioned, Agri-Nature Center programs, the Ag Committee, the Main Street Initiative that you're going to hear about, Route 66 celebrations, Hopeful Neighborhoods initiatives, the Growers Market, people trying to bring music to the village. We're only limited by our imagination and our level of effort. So get involved, enjoy, make a difference. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Katie Flam?
I'm Katie Flam, 524 Chamiso Lane, Northwest. So a couple of last, perhaps, Board of Trustees meeting, I brought up the idea of a community swimming pool. And I learned that Mr. Avila made some inquiries about that or made a report on that. So the pool that I was thinking of is on the Anderson property, and evidently it's 15 by 30 feet, so it's not a huge pool. But it requires things like security fencing, staffing, and it must be maintained by certified lifeguards all the time. So this is just beginning the discussion, and I'm sort of disappointed that you didn't change the agenda so that the informal discussion would have been up front. I would love to hear if this idea is a good idea, a bad idea, too expensive, whatever. I'd like to hear about that. But a couple of things were that the pool will require, according to Mr. Avila, $1,000 a month to heat and $100 daily for chlorine, which doesn't seem like the right price. But in any case, it's good to have some of these facts, and I'd love to find out if this is something that maybe could happen in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Nancy Nanjaroni?
Hi, Nancy Nanjaroni, 7315 Guadalupe Trail, and I'll be very brief. Just wondering what's going on with Guadalupe Trail, that new pavement that was put in. We did hear some agreement that the pavement was wider than it should have been, but we haven't heard about any resolution on that. And so I just want to keep that issue alive for everybody, because I know that there's a lot of people who think it should have been narrower. So thank you. That's it.
Thank you. Ms. Gordine McKenzie?
Gordine McKenzie, 7315 Guadalupe Trail, Northwest. I have a few announcements. The Los Ranchos Historical Society was invited to put a talk together on Rudolfo Anaya, a world-class New Mexico writer whose work has been all over the globe. The invited talk will take place on October 26th at 1 p.m. at the Rudolfo Anaya Library. Everyone is welcome. It's free. There'll be 4 of us that are going to be speaking on Rudolfo Anaya. And I he was my professor and someone that I knew, but some of his books are set in Los Ranchos, and he provides a very interesting history. The second announcement I wanted to make is the Los Ranchos Holiday Art Market will be held from 10 to 2 p.m. on December 7th and December 14th. There'll be music, food trucks, prizes from the artists, and the theme, of course, is buy local. And I know you'll be discussing this later, so I won't go into a lot of detail, but maybe mark your calendars for the Stop and Shop, which is a time to get people to buy from our local merchants. And that will take place on December 7th and 8th. And there'll be a fold out in the next issue of Village Vision. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Elisa Nolasco?
Hello, I'm Elisa Nolasco, 8747 A4 Street Northwest. My property borderlines your property. And I live right next to your Del Norte walking space, and it's a very nice space, but now you have a hedge of weeds. Your weeds are out of control. And where you have your irrigation system that's going to be in motion someday, you have so many tumbleweeds that, yes, I am worried that that can become my problem. Because there's nothing blocking the wind. And the wind comes in so strong, and if it gets loose, and I do try to keep my property clear, my fence line. And it's not perfect, but there's a lot of weeds on your property. And I get it, it's open space. But I have a neighbor that no longer feels safe because of the hedge of weeds of parking up that way on your parking lot. So she crosses through the barbed wire fence, and she crosses through my side. And this way I can keep an eye on her when she walks. But I just wanted to call that to your attention, is that looks really shabby now. The walking place is fine, but the area on the sides of it is terrible. It started off good with no weeds, but now it's a little out of control. If you could do something, I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Mayor Pro Tem trustees, that concludes public comment for this evening.
Okay, so approval of the minutes for September 17, 2024. Is there a motion to approve the minutes of September 17, 2024?
I'll approve the minutes of September 17th, 2024.
Is there a second?
I don't feel right to do a second or to vote on it because I wasn't here. So,
Right here, okay.
I'll second.
Okay, second, okay. So let me call the question. Trustee Benavides?
I'm recusing myself.
Okay. Trustee Kiefer?
Yes.
Trustee Radnovich?
yes.
Trustee Rano, yes, okay. Number 7, presentation. C&M Vice President of Finance and Operations, Olivia Padilla Jackson.
Good evening, Mr. Chair and esteemed Board of Trustees. My name is Olivia Padilla Jackson. I serve as the Vice President for Finance and Operations and have a presentation for you. I just want to thank you for the few minutes that you have allowed me to just share the importance about the upcoming election and Bond 3. So I'm just going to move this just a bit. All right. So thank you. Can you go to the next slide, please? So the first thing that we are sharing about this, and that I think is really important to share, is that if this bond passes, there would be no tax rate increase to any of the taxpayers. That's something that's really important to us. I also want to talk a little bit about the jobs that it would create. In terms of economic impact, usually with these types of bonds for higher education, a study is done to just talk about how many jobs are created if the bond passes. And in this case, that study was done and it showed that 2,300 new jobs would be created with the projects that would be implemented. And this includes jobs in the areas of trades, science, architect, accounting, construction, of course. And the other cool thing about this bond is it impacts communities across the entire state. So the economies of 29 communities in 23 different distinct counties across New Mexico. And the last thing I wanted to mention was, next slide, please. So what does this mean for CNM? Just two main projects that we would benefit from if this bond passes. So next slide. Just really quickly, I wanted to share a really cool new Center for Technical Innovation and Entrepreneurial Development. And so what this would be is a collaborative space that would be on our main campus for learners, employers, entrepreneurs, and the community members to engage in technology, entrepreneurship, and creative arts. It includes expansion of programs like our Fuse Makerspace, our Deep Dive Technology boot camps, our AI and quantum boot camps, as well as our quantum technician boot camp. Next slide, please. The center would also establish a permanent home for our current Fuse Makerspace, and currently our Fuse Makerspace is located in downtown Albuquerque, and we lease space from UNM, which has been really great to have that, but they have plans for the space, and so this new center would be a permanent house for our Fuse Makerspace. Next slide, please. The next project is improvements, health and safety. I'm sure you all are very familiar with these types of projects. It's not as exciting, but obviously very important to us and to CNM and the community to keep us safe. So next slide kind of shows the types of improvements we're talking about at our various 7 sites across the metro. So I guess the one thing I would mention is it includes a new emergency broadcast system to help with, in case of an emergency on campus, this system would be embedded into the fire panels. And so currently we use a texting system to notify all of our community of an emergency on campus. This new system would allow us to use the fire panels to have voice-activated notifications, screens, computers, laptops, and then telephone as well as text. So it's just a more comprehensive way of communicating emergencies. Next slide. So how can you help? First, thank you for letting me come here to share information about Bond 3, the higher education bond. In-person voting has already started, as you all are well aware, and early voting, I should say. And then, of course, you may or may not know that expanded voting starts on October 19th, which just means more sites and longer hours to vote. And Election Day is on November 5th. Thank you. And so if you want to learn more about it, you can visit this website. So feel free to ask me any questions, but that's all I had for you tonight. And again, just really thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you so
Okay,
much.
you.
Have a great meeting.
Okay, let's see. So sitting in for Captain Kimbrough, Fred?
Thank you, Mayor and Trustees. This is supposed to be for Captain Justin Kimbrough. He is retiring at the end of November. When we set this up, I just wanted to say a few words about him, and I'll explain to you why he's not here. But he started with the Bernalillo County Sheriff's Department in 2006 and has worked in all the different field services division, which includes North Valley, South Valley, and in the East Mountains. Worked in the DWI and traffic unit in 2010 and 2011. And in 2012 to 2014, he was assigned to the narcotics detective. He was promoted to sergeant in 2015, 2019 he was promoted to lieutenant, and 2021 he was promoted to captain. Why is he retiring? Well, supporting his wife. She took on a job in North Carolina, and his family has already moved to North Carolina. They've been there since about, I think, May, and he's furthering her career as she suffered during his 20 years with the Bernalillo County Sheriff's Department. He's married, has 2 great kids, and as I said, he loves his job. The last thing he's been a high school football coach for the last 11 years. And actually, that's where he's at tonight, his final junior varsity game in high school before he moves to North Carolina. But one of the things that I wanted to say just very briefly is I've been involved in the village since 2010, worked with a lot of different lieutenants, captains, sheriffs, and I have to say that Captain Kimbrough was probably the best. Very responsive. He was available 24/7. I could pick up a phone, call him, send him a text, send him an email, and usually within a short amount of time he responded. If he had issues from citizens, he would go out and meet with the citizens or make sure that he had a lieutenant or somebody there. We don't know who his replacement is going to be. He's hoping to get a little bit of time with the new captain, whoever they appoint. But I just wanted to say he's been a great asset in my mind to the village, and he's sorely going to be missed. He's been a great person to work with, and anything the village has needed, whether it be people at meetings, whether it be meeting with the public, whatever it may be, he put that on top of his agenda. And so when we put this together, he said yes, and then he called me a little bit later and goes, I've got a football game. It's my final junior varsity game. And so to be honest with you, I think that's a little bit more important to him at this point than to sit here and listen to me rant. So I just want to congratulate him on his retirement, and I think he'll be sorely missed. Thank you.
Thank you, Fred. Okay. The next item on the agenda is a proclamation of Los Ranchos 66 on Route 66, an anniversary celebration commemorating the establishment of the village along historic Route 66 within the ancient community of the Village Valley. And the proclamation reads as follows. Whereas the village of Los Ranchos was incorporated on December 29, 1958 in the county of Bernalillo, state of New Mexico, and whereas the village has existed along what was known as US Route 66 from 1926 until 37, and 4th Street after that, whereas the Los Ranchos community that became the village has known the route now called 4th Street as its Camino Real for hundreds of years, and thousands of years previous it was served as the north-south trade route for indigenous people in the area, whereas the Board of Trustees wishes to recognize the deep history of the community and the importance the route served for the communication and commerce in the past as well as today, and whereas the improvement to 4th Street, Route 66 roadway, and frontage in the village is designed to honor the past and provide for the future of the community, and pending phases of the construction project will continue to incorporate the desires of the community as it progresses. And whereas the recognition of the past as well as the future of Old Route 66, now 4th Street within the village, within the community, has extra significance during the 66th anniversary of the village, and whereas the celebration serves to mark the community moving forward together with preservation and improvements to 4th Street, Old 66 corridor. Now therefore, I, Frank Rhino, as Mayor Pro Tem, and the Board of Trustees of the Village of Los Ranchos de Albuquerque, New Mexico, to hereby proclaim that on this day, the Board of Trustees and the residents of the Village of Los Ranchos celebrate the history of Route 66 in the village and 66th anniversary of the village on December 29th, 2004. and dated this 15th day of October. My additional comment is that we are certainly always interested in individuals who want to volunteer to help. And so please contact myself or Administrator Avila, and we can get you working. I think this is an important event for the village and something that we should all support. So thank you all very much. Okay, and thank you as the board. Okay, financial business discussion approval of the September 2024 cash report. Will?
Thank you, sir. Before you is the cash report for September 30th, 2024. The ending cash balance at September 30th, 2024 was $12,545,225.42, which is an increase of $380,457.80 for the month, with the year-to-date excess of revenues over expenditures is $116,877.71, with a few unusual or significant items for you. Thank you.
Okay. Is there a motion to approve the September 2024 cash report?
Yeah, sure, I'll do a motion to approve the September 2024 cash report.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay. Discussion from the governing body. Trustee Benavides?
Well, let's see, so we're talking about all the reports, right?
That's correct, yeah.
Cash report, yeah. Well, I mean, it includes the tables of the general fund, right? Okay. So yes. So I see under unusual and significant items, a check for 2023 delinquent taxes on property the village purchased. Were we delinquent? Do you know?
Mayor Pro Tem, Trustee Benavides, good evening, it's Tammy. Can you guys hear me?
I can, yes.
Okay, wonderful. I can't get my video to start. So what that significant item is for is, so in a normal situation, governments do not pay taxes. However, we purchased the Anderson property in 2023, 5100 Rio Grande Boulevard, and that is what those taxes are for. So they were the taxes due for 2023. The bill had not come out yet when we purchased in September. In November, the bill came out and we knew the exact amount that was owed at that point. And so we received those in the mail, we paid those. However, we did discuss this last month, I believe, when we did the bar, and I know you weren't here, Trustee. We got a credit when we purchased the land for part of those taxes off of our purchase price. So this is what was due, what was owed.
Yeah, so you're saying it could have been a lot more. Yeah, if it hadn't been sold to a government agency.
Mayor Pro Tem Trustee Benavides, this is the actual price that it would have been regardless, but now going forward, we will not have taxes that we will pay on it going forward.
No, I understand.
We are, okay.
Okay, so second thing. On the same page, the village paid Polish Concrete Company $12,000 for repair on raised crosswalk on 6780 4th Street. So I'm a little surprised that there was not a warranty for that work.
Mayor Pro Tem Trustee Benavides, I believe the warranty would have already come and gone. We accepted that project well over a year ago, so I don't know if Maria maybe has any additional comment on that, but I believe the warranty period had already expired on that. And that crosswalk popped up due to the heat. So I believe the way that it was completed now, it should prevent it from doing that again.
So the new work, the repair work is under some sort of warranty, I assume. Okay.
Mayor Pro Tem Trustee Benavides, that is correct. I can't tell you exactly but there is a warranty on the board.
Okay, on page 35, general fund, under the row called General Administration, we have current period-to-date budget of $88,600, okay? But the actual cash basis was 141,000, and the variance it was 52,000. So general administration, it seems like that's very predictable as to what those expenses would be. Did we not budget correctly when we did the current period budget?
Mayor Pro Tem Trustee Benavides, trustees, so a majority of those expenses are predictable. However, there are a few that are not predictable that come out of this department. One of those is attorney's fees. So the attorney's fees were budgeted higher. However, we have had quite a bit of attorney's fees this year, and that is the department they come out of. So that is the biggest reason why this is so much higher than we anticipated. Again, we did increase what we thought attorney's fees would be from last year, and it just has not been enough at this point.
Okay, no, I understand. That's all I have, thank you.
Trustee Kiefer?
I have no questions.
Trustee Radovich?
I just have a couple. Tammy, what do you, the month we did quite well on gross receipts tax, do you have any thoughts on why that is? Because this didn't include Balloon Fiesta, right? This is September.
Mayor Pro Tem, Trustee Radovich, trustees, so there's a couple things here. Our gross receipts tax are 2 months in arrears. So what you're seeing coming in September is actually July. So during July, we had Lavender Fest. We also have had construction revenue coming in. So those are two of the biggest factors as to why that is up. We have also seen a steady increase of GRT every year at about a 3% rate of growth. And so that also takes that into consideration. So what we are looking at is, those are some of the reasons why it is so high. Overall for the year, we do anticipate at least a 3% increase from what we ended the year last year.
I see. Thank you. It sure appears that we're spending a lot of money as a village, and I mentioned that last month, and I just wanted to mention it again. I think we really need to watch ourselves. Trustee Benavides asked a few other questions that I had. Let me scroll down real quick. The cash expenditures that we had at the end of September, I think that's the largest month that I can remember ever since I've been in this post. Would you agree with that, Tammy?
Mayor Pro Tem, Trustee Radovich, trustees, off the top of my head, I can't be 100% certain. However, I do know that this month and also going forward for this fiscal year, you will see a pretty large expenditure because of the Rescue Act. We must expend all of our Rescue Act funds by June 30th of 2025. And we had about $600,000 left to spend starting this year. So during this fiscal year, in that fund alone, we will have to spend all of that. And this month alone, we spent $122,000 finishing some projects up. So that is one of the reasons that that popped up so high. We also had the Fire Protection Fund distribution from the state come in the prior month, and we paid it out to the county this month. So for those two items alone, there was $200,000 that we spent, and that was not our own money. That was either spent or it was passed on to the county. So that is part of the big increase that you're seeing this month. But please keep in mind that Rescue Act does need to be fully expensed. So you will see that completely over the next, over the remainder of the fiscal year. You will see that drop to zero. So we will have bigger expenses there.
That makes sense. Thank you, Tammy. That's all I had.
So I just have a couple of quick questions. They have to deal with police and fire. And I understand that BCSO and the fire department are providing those services to us. And the expenditures here are pretty consistent, obviously, from month to month. Question I have, though, is at what point then, as a board, do we need to consider any kind of adjustment to the budget in order to account for what might occur over upcoming fiscal years, Tammy? Is that something that we would do at the end of the year?
So Mayor Pro Tem Trustee, I want to make sure I understand you. So, and I also want to make sure we're on the same page. You are talking about the budget that we have for BCSO and the fire department, the Bernalillo County Fire Department.
Correct.
Those expenditures that we have are set already. So for the fire department, we have the IGA, the intergovernmental agreement that we signed with them. And we already know that we will be paying $800,000 this year for that. For the Bernalillo County Sheriff's Department, we have an MOU with them for up to $50,000 plus the money we get from the state for the LEPF fund. So those numbers are pretty set as far as what we are paying out to them based on agreements and MOUs we have in place. Now, as for how we are obtaining money for that, we did take that into consideration, the increase in the IGA agreement for the next 2 years of $200,000 each, or I'm sorry, $100,000 each year. We did take that into consideration when we talked about and discussed and passed the increase for the GRT. So we have looked at that. Now, increases to any of those agreements won't be happening without us sitting down and looking at the agreements again with both parties and signing a new agreement. So is there some other expense that you are speaking about, or are those the ones that you had concern about?
No, those are the ones I had concern about. Yeah, that answered it, Tammy. That answered it. The other question I have is a kind of follow-up to the question that was raised about the Rescue Act. Are there limitations on how that money can be spent? Is it only for infrastructure projects, or is there other monies, are there other ways that those monies can be spent by the village?
Mayor Pro Tem, trustees, so there are restrictions on the money. I don't have the list in front of me, but there is something the state provided to us, and there's specific items that it can be spent on. Infrastructure is one, public safety, health. Those are some of the items. So we sat down when we first got that grant awarded to us, and we looked at the different ways we could spend it, and we looked at that time with the trustees and the administration then to see what we could spend it on. Now, as we've had changes in administration, we've made sure that we are keeping on top of those expenditures and making sure that we're spending it so we don't lose it. And we do have a set criteria that has to be met for certain things. So we can't just pay, we can't buy certain things. We can't buy office supplies. We can't pay for like rental of equipment. There's certain criteria that has to be met, and I can try and find that and send that over to you guys if you would like. I know we have it in our files. I just don't have it in front of me to be able to give you that criteria.
Okay, thank you, Tammy. That's all the questions I have. Were there any others from the trustees? Anybody? Okay.
I think those are good questions.
Okay.
I'm more and more worried about how much we spend.
Okay, so, excuse me. So let me call the question. Trustee Benavides?
Yes.
Trustee Kiefer?
Yes.
Trustee Radovich?
Yes.
Trustee Rano, yes, thank you. Okay, discussion to approve the resolution number 2024-10-01, a resolution recommending budget revisions related to the road fund and the capital improvement fund 216 and 311. And so, can we have a discussion now from CFO Silva?
Mayor Pro Tem, trustees, but before you is resolution number 2024-10-01, and this budget resolution, as stated, is for two different funds. It is the movement of money, transferring money that has already been budgeted from the 216 road fund into the 311 capital projects fund. And the reason for this adjustment is because we have New Mexico NMDOT co-op money that we have received, and with that money we have a match. That match was budgeted for in the 216 fund, but the project will be paid out of the 311 fund. So this is just for ease of accounting and making sure all the money stays together for the project. This resolution is just moving money from the 216 fund into the 311 fund for clean accounting. So I stand for any questions.
So is there a motion to approve resolution 2024-10-01?
I'll make a motion to approve 2024-01.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay. Discussion from the governing body. Trustee Benavides?
I have none.
Trustee Kiefer?
I have none.
Trustee Radovich?
None.
Trustee Rano? None at all. Okay. Call the question. Trustee Benavides?
Yes.
Trustee Kiefer?
Yes.
Trustee Radovich?
Yes.
Trustee Rano, yes. Okay. Under new business, discussion and approval of resolution number 2024-10-02, resolution to adopt a template for covenants under ordinance number 299 as recommended by the Planning and Zoning Commission and is approved by the Board of Trustees regarding template language for all conservation area covenants. Attorney Chappell.
Mayor and members, Board of Trustees, I've been asked to go through this in Mr. Hill's absence, and I'll be happy to do so. As you'll recall, the Board of Trustees passed Ordinance 299 related to cluster housing and those types of developments. In that ordinance, there is a requirement under section N1 that there be perpetual covenants for preserving the things in this ordinance filed with the Bernalillo County Clerk's Office. When this was reviewed by the Planning and Zoning Commission, there was a recommendation that we adopt a template for those resolutions and covenants so that it wasn't something that came up at the end of the process like it did in the Chavez Guadalupe matter. So I was asked, and in conjunction with staff, to develop a set of covenants that would work. My recommendation was that we not do these as a part of an ordinance, because if you need to make a change in the ordinance, it's a long process. And so the covenants you cannot adopt, you cannot draft so that they cover every situation for the next 5 or 10 years. So there needs to be some flexibility that can be handled more easily in a resolution than in an ordinance. So in the Ordinance 299, there is a section under one section that talks about the Conservation Area Management Plan. So as part of the approval, the developer's going to have to come in with a plan as to what this conservation area is going to be used for, how it's going to be managed, all those kind of things. And so we kind of went off of that as to what needed to be included in the resolutions. Part of the reason for the covenants is that many of the rulings of the village on different aspects of a site plan, or that kind of thing, are not of public record. So if some person comes along and buys them and doesn't have notice, there could be a claim that they're not bound by them because they didn't have notice of them. Recording gives notice to everyone, so part of the purpose of the covenants was to give public notice of what was in there, what was necessary, that kind of thing. An additional purpose of the covenants is to set up an enforcement procedure that would work with enforcing the covenants. In these covenants, we have kind of gone through the process in terms of who's the responsible party, the expectation that there will be a homeowners association formed to administer these things at some point once the developer has no further monetary interest in the project, and then sets up a provision as to how these can be enforced. And that provision is basically, even though we've incorporated a lot of things in the ordinance itself as to what should be enforced, the village can give notice. Well, first of all, the association must represent to the village or the developer that they have established a contingency fund for administration and paying for the maintenance of the conservation area. And once a year, the village has a right under the covenants to review that to see if they're following through. In other words, you don't get 2 or 3 years behind, say we have no money. They're supposed to do that and make those assessments on an annual basis. If the proper maintenance is not carried out, then the covenants have a provision that the village can give that notice to the association, the responsible party, to correct those things that need to be corrected. The ordinance says that the covenants say they must be corrected within 30 days after the notice, unless it's something that cannot be corrected in 30 days. They must start compliance within 30 days and proceed in a diligent manner to cure the maintenance and other issues that are there. If they do not cure in that period of time, the covenants provide that the village it's not required to, but it can step in and actually perform the maintenance of what is required to be done to comply with the approvals granted by the village in its the management plan and that sort of thing. If that occurs, then if the village is not reimbursed within 60 days, I believe, the village can file a lien under the municipal ordinances or the municipal code that will constitute a lien not only on the open space, but on all of the houses in the subdivision, and which can be foreclosed to recover the amount of that lien. So that's the enforcement provisions that we were wanting to put in place to give us a very direct way to do that. And beyond that, it's mostly just notice and adopting as a part of the covenants whatever is approved in the site plan, so it becomes a part of the covenants. Whatever is approved as a part of the open space management plan, that becomes specifically a part of the covenants. And so this is just an implementation of the ordinance in that, Ordinance 299 in that regard. The covenants, the resolution does say that these covenants may be modified by the board of directors based upon circumstances, based on different kinds of projects. It does have one specific provision in it which says that the covenants cannot be released so that it to be used for something else without unanimous consent of the trustees. In other words, so that's not a, majority of three trustees being here. It takes unanimous consent to lift these restrictions from the conservation open space. So those are the kind of substance provisions that are here. I would ask that if you adopt this, that we be able to make 2 typographical changes that I think we all missed. In paragraph 10, in the 3rd line, it says written notice noncompliance, there needs to be an "of" stated there. And if you look over at paragraph 7, you'll find the only paragraph heading that is not underlined is paragraph 7. Those two probably need to be made as the final form to be attached to the resolution. I'd be happy to answer any questions and anything that you might think needs to be covered that's not.
Do we need to do a motion first? Okay.
Is there a motion to approve resolution 2024-10-02?
Motion to approve resolution 2024-10- what was it?
02.
02, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Discussion from the governing body, trustee Benavides?
Yes, so you talked about some minor corrections. I think I found one more, but maybe because I don't understand legal speak. Paragraph 3 on page 53. Let's see. Okay, it's a very long sentence, but on the fourth line, it reads, however, that if the remediation of the issues raised, do you really want the word "that" in there? It seems like it reads better if it just says, however, if the remediation of the issues raised. That caught me by surprise when I read it like that.
I'll be happy to remove the "that" and.
Well, unless it makes sense to you, because it doesn't.
It's fine, yeah, either way.
I kind of got tongue-tied with the word "that" being in there. Yeah, so a few other things. On page 54, under paragraph 9, water rights. So the developer was required to provide proof of rights for water availability to comply with the provisions of the Conservation Area Management Plan. This conservation ordinance also applies to R2 and R3, correct?
It applies only to those projects that are applied for under this provision, which has the cluster housing and so forth. There are a number of things in Ordinance 299 that says if they're not specified in this particular development, in this ordinance, you will apply the requirements of R2 and R3.
Okay, well, so yeah, my question was, assuming they meet the minimum requirements, if you have a property that's zoned R2 or R3, you can participate in this ordinance. Now, what if those properties do not have water rights? So if as I read this, it makes the assumption that there are water rights, other than just having water utility plumbed into your property, right?
Mayor Renaud and Trustee Benavides, if you look at subsection, what is it? 1K, it's on page 62 of the ordinance. You probably don't have it in front of you. But in the Conservation Area Management Plan, and this is what we picked up, it has the Conservation Area Management Plan is mandatory and shall include the following, okay? And then it gives a list of things that it requires. Item number 6 is provide proof of water availability.
Yes.
So if the management plan requires water availability for the open space, then the covenants simply say that will be enforced as part of the covenants.
So no, I understand that part, but you were using the word proof of rights. So that has a different meaning to me. That means either well water or surface water, not utility water.
The reason we use rights, if you've got rights and they're 1907 rights and you've got a well, you also have water availability.
No, so let's say you don't have a well, you don't have access to the ditch, but you have faucets in your house and you have spigots outside to water your lawn. I don't think you call those water rights, correct?
Correct.
And so my point is, you have to provide proof of water rights according to paragraph 9, and that would preclude R2 and R3 from participating because they don't, most likely, they don't have that proof. That's the point I was trying to make.
Okay. Let me look at that language again. The point was that whatever was required in the Conservation Area Management Plan, which requires provide proof of water availability, whatever that is, we want to enforce in the covenant. So let me see if the.
Okay.
And
And I understand the issue about water availability, and I agree totally with that, but something got lost and,
Okay.
because now it's called water rights.
Provide proof of rights for water availability to comply with the provision, is what the sentence says. And so we're.
Well, if you think that's correct, I never considered it a water right if you have water plumbed into your house, but you're okay with
Well,
it?
if you get water through MRGCD, that's allocated to a piece of ground, and you have a right to the MRGCD water. If you have water for a well water, if it's anything other than for residential use or some agricultural use, you must have water rights before you can.
No, I get that, but let's say you have neither of those, but you have water from the Albuquerque-Bernalillo County Water Authority. Are those called rights? Because you're using the word rights in here. And if you're okay with that, I'm okay with it. I'm just wondering if that was a
I think if
point.
you contract and they will give you water for that purpose, you have a right to it. I think.
Okay, if you're fine with
Yeah.
it, then I'm fine with it.
The problem I use the rights is because you may have water rights, but you still may not have water availability. So I tried to tie the two together. You may have MRGCD rights, but there's no water. You may have a well that has something later than 1907 water,
Yeah.
and you can't pump it. So those are the things that I think are dealt with in the approval process under 299 is where I think that really takes place.
Okay, one final point, and this point, I don't make this point to derail what you've covered here, because I'm in favor with what you wrote up. But at one of the public meetings on this, I think it was during the public meetings, we talked about a template, a different kind of template, as a worksheet to help you calculate the density bonus. So I was assuming I would see that as well. Is that something that'll come later and it's not something we vote on?
Trustee Benavides, I believe that Mr. Hill explained that they would do a workup of that with each application because it will be different depending on what they did, and would supply that with the application process. I don't know that it was to be a part of this ordinance. I was not
Okay.
in that process. But
And it may just be a tool, it'd be handy to have a tool that you could just access off our village website. And it's something like a Excel spreadsheet where you put in the numbers and it tells you what the bonus is, right?
Yes,
Because it's a very confusing calculation for many people.
Yep, and Mr. Hill said in the planning department, they would provide that kind of formatting and calculation with the application for anyone that applied for a permit under this section.
Well, I think it should be available prior to any application, so somebody may or may not want to apply based upon how that worksheet.
I understand that.
Bonus.
That was a little different than the covenants that were to be perpetual and recorded with the county that I was working on.
Okay, I get it. That's all I have.
Trustee Giever?
Yeah, I've got questions. Sorry, the print is super small. So I want to make sure that I understand, Attorney Chappell, that this is going to be for the entire development, these covenants, correct?
These covenants, say if there's 4 acres in it and 2 of them are open space and 2 of them are housing, these covenants are recorded on the entire 4 acres, yes.
Okay. And what happens to the 2 conservation acres are protected also by these covenants, of course, because they're part of the 4, but it doesn't change the permissive and conditional uses as defined in the ordinance under 299, correct?
Now, Trustee Kiefer, this simply adopts what is approved by the village in the approval of the project, in all of the approvals that are given for that project. It pulls them over and makes those enforceable as a covenant, not only just as an approval in an ordinance. So if the conservation management plan is 2 acres, there will be a specific criteria for that that's approved as a part of the project. That's what's in the ordinance. So that becomes enforceable as to the open space. These covenants affect the balance of the 2 acres, the extra 2 acres, only to the point that they can't be used for anything other than what was approved, but we don't get involved with height of buildings, size of buildings, or whatever. That's somewhere that's approved elsewhere, and makes there a lien on the property to cover maintenance of the open space. These don't change anything. They just incorporate what was approved by the Board of Trustees for the project.
So I guess I just want to make sure, because now that there's the ordinance, right, and in 299, it eliminated what 284 had, which was the permit approval process by the board before the project ever went before planning and zoning. That process was eliminated in 299. So what I assume is going to happen now, and that's what I guess I want to clarify, is an applicant comes in, an applicant provides all the necessary documentation with, water rights, their plats, their plans, their site development plan, all of that good stuff, what they're going to do with that open space, because there are a lot of approved uses for the conservation area, agriculture, whether there's going to be open structures, all of that good stuff. But that still that is not approved at staff level. That still goes before planning and zoning as through a true subdivision, major subdivision approval process, correct?
Trustee Kiefer, that is correct, and that's not something that was dealt with in the covenants. If you look at Ordinance 299, there is a sort of a flow chart that's in the front of the flow chart as to who has the right to approve whatever. But it says any development, 299 says any development for one of these projects will be treated as a major subdivision. So even though it may not otherwise qualify. What that means is that it goes to the planning department, they do a sketch plat, they get feedback, and then there's a preliminary plat, and ultimately everything goes in a regular course for a major subdivision from planning to planning and zoning, and ultimately approved by the Board of Trustees.
Which means that open space and how that looks in X particular project is still up to planning and zoning as well as the board's discretion.
Yes, it goes through planning and zoning, they make recommendations, but in a major subdivision, the site development plan, the plat, and everything, the final approval is in the Board of Trustees.
Okay, great. And then these will be signed prior to that so that we see that planning and zoning sees it, we see it, that there's already an agreement too, instead of trying to get one after the fact.
And that's already in Ordinance 299, so that's not in the covenant. You have to follow this before the covenants ever come into play.
Which is why I'm trying to follow 299 on here, but it's a little difficult.
Yeah.
So.
because say the covenants are recorded only when all of the approvals have been done and the plat is recorded, the covenants are recorded at that time, so they will reflect everything that's been done. As you recall, the major difference in process was under the pilot project under 284, the Board of Trustees approved that. It didn't go through P&Z. This one goes through the normal process, planning director, planning department, P&Z, and the Board of Trustees.
Great, thank you. That's all I have.
Trustee Radovich?
I have a couple things. So, Mr. Chappell, after we put this template in place, each subdivision that comes through under 299 will have its own set of covenants that are also part of the subdivision process. Will they be an amendment to this? Or how does that work from the perspective of these covenants and restrictions versus the more detailed covenants and restrictions that the developer will put together that run with the land?
Trustee Radnovich, these covenants are not intended to take the place of normal homeowners association covenants. That has to do with where you park your cars, all of this kind of thing. If they want to incorporate these into their homeowners covenants, I don't think we have a problem with that. But I think we should try to keep them separate because I don't think the village wants to get involved as to whether or not you're maintaining your lawn correctly, whether you're parking a truck on the street, all of that kind of stuff in a homeowner. So the purpose here was to separate those out from those kind of homeowners covenants as they got all meshed together in Chavez Guadalupe, which then made a big problem as to whether or not the village could come in and enforce, parking your street and your landscaping requirements on your homes.
Which is why it says Village of Los Ranchos covenants, correct?
These could be totally separate or they could be incorporated, but probably would be totally separate from the homeowners type covenants.
Got it. Thank you. On page 51 of our packet, and I've seen this, I think I brought this up last month, but it says pursuant to 9227 ordinances, the developer is required to record perpetual covenants, et cetera, for conservation open space for agricultural, recreational, or conservation of open space. That's under recitals C. Shouldn't we specify passive recreation? Because in many circles, especially recreation and parks kind of circles, passive recreation means a very different thing than recreation, which can include, basketball courts and things like that. And I realize that 299 does cover that, but would it make sense to use the word passive in front of recreational in this covenant restriction?
Trustee Radnovich, the purpose of the covenants was not to try to change what's already in the ordinance. If we wanted to do that, we would have to adopt an amendment to the ordinance as opposed to a resolution. This was a general description of what is in 16. Okay. There are already prohibitions against passive uses and so forth, and what this does is simply say that this is going to give public notice of that. And number two, it incorporates that whatever conservation area management plan is approved by the trustees, that's what's enforceable under these covenants. It does not try to set criteria because that will change from time to time.
Does 299?
It's all in 299, yes.
Does it state recreational, not passive recreation?
I believe there are things that are not included. I can find it.
I don't have 299 in front of me.
Can I kind of weigh in on that a little bit? Because I think you're bringing up an interesting question. Because in the front it says, recreational but under the agreement, number 1, where it says preservation of conservation open space, it says the party shall preserve open space for conservation of wildlife habitat, agriculture, or natural landscape. It doesn't include at all recreational use.
Okay.
So I just think we need to clarify.
Yeah.
Now, and I do recall that it was included in 299.
Yeah, in page 6 of it, it says that the things that can be used is outdoor storage if they're specifically required for use in the open space, but they must be screened. Habitat, including habitat for migratory wildlife and wildfire, wild game, pedestrian and equestrian trails, existing or new structures for purpose of maintaining the conservation area or support and uses of the conservation area, unenclosed structures for shade and picnic areas. Trees are encouraged in general as an alternate to shade construction. Preservation of existing natural landscapes and features such as cottonwood trees, native vegetation, etc. Parks with customary playground equipment are allowed as used in the R2 and the R3 zone. Use is prohibited. Golf driving ranges, paved sports court, impervious surfaces included in 3 above, bleachers or similar structures to provide seating for guests or invitees. Other recreational uses do not further the goals of agriculture, habitat, or natural features or preserving the natural landscape. So that's all in the ordinance itself as to what the uses can be.
Perfect, thank you. On 2, I'm sorry, I get detailed with this stuff. Under the agreement itself, which starts on our page 52, number 2 under that, which is the last paragraph on page 52. I thought it was curious that we didn't include weeds in what they shall keep free, the conservation area free of. It says junk, garbage, other kinds of things, but it doesn't say weeds. So I thought maybe it should.
Yeah, and those were some general descriptions, but if you want to put other things in and set a criteria for the landscaping and all of that, you have the authority under this, the 299, to do that. And this covenant, like I say, is not to change any of that. It is to enforce what the Board of Trustees approves.
Yep.
And so it wasn't the first, it's not setting the criteria, it's enforcing the criteria established under 299
I understand.
by the Board of Trustees.
I understand, Bill. This just seems like a no-brainer to put weeds in there. The other sentence that to the extent any structures, and this is at the very bottom, or improvements are permitted to be built on the conservation open space, these improvements shall be built. If there's already some kind of structure there, like a barn, for instance, shouldn't it be retained or built? Because some things might be retained, right? If it,
Yeah, but I think those kind of things are for the ordinance and your approval under the ordinance. We put in here, though, because this was discussed in the discussions at the board level, that if they're going to build something out there, they've got to be good quality, they've got to be maintained and good construction. So that's as far as we went with that. If there are existing buildings like a barn, then they're responsible for maintaining them. But we don't put any.
I thought the word built inferred, newly built.
Well, I think it does, but the 299 refers also to existing buildings.
True. Okay, I'm now on page 53, and I'm on number 4. I take it that we, the village, would determine on the very last line of number 4, what would be the most restrictive of rules and regulations that control the open space, correct?
Correct. The Board of Trustees would make that decision when you approve the project.
Okay, and on number 5, on the very last sentence, can you explain what that means to me? The doctrine of waiver or change of conditions shall not apply to these covenants. It's legalese that I think
The doctrine of
people don't
waiver
know
or
what-
change of conditions. Yeah, this just simply says it can be used only for what's approved. But legally, when you have protective covenants in a subdivision or something like that, there's a doctrine of waiver or change of conditions. And so if somebody comes in and says, okay, under these covenants, you have not enforced this particular thing, like a setback, something like that, then that could constitute a waiver. And so therefore it becomes unenforceable. Change of conditions, if you have a subdivision that's residential, it's grown up and there's commercial all around it and so forth, you could get relief from change of conditions because of what's grown up around it. It's no longer residential. Those kinds of waivers and change of conditions typically don't apply to a municipality under zoning ordinances, but they do apply under private covenants. And so my purpose here was to pull that protection from the governmental legal side into these covenants and say that that would not be a defense to enforcement of these covenants because of a change of condition or a waiver or something.
I see. Okay. I think, oh yeah, I had one small thing. On page 54, 11, you need a period at the end of the sentence. Okay, that's all I had, Mayor Pro Tem. I did read it.
Okay, Attorney Chappell, just a couple of questions. On page 51, when you say the developer has formed, and in parens, it's association, is that kind of the term of choice, or is the expectation that each of these projects is going to be an HOA?
I think that as a practical matter, that the village will require the formation of a homeowners association, okay? And a homeowners association under the Homeowners Act can be incorporated or unincorporated, but they need to form one. Otherwise, when a developer is required to relinquish control, which they must do after selling about 60% of the lots, there's no organization to carry out the provisions of these covenants, no responsible party, so to speak. So my intent with that was by the time you get to this stage where you have finally approved a development, the developer must have formed that entity that will be in a position to carry forward once the developer sells out of the lots. So there will be a homeowners association in order to do that. And like I say, it can be incorporated or unincorporated, but it must be formed.
So it could be a minimum of 3 or 4 homes, could be an association.
Mayor, that is correct. Nevertheless, there needs to be some format. And you get into this all the time. If you've got 2 people that want to do something, and it needs to be done, but you don't have an association with any bylaws or whatever, it will take unanimous consent to do it. And so you need a structure so that the homeowners themselves can get things done if they want to do it. Because you don't want unanimous consent to sit there and nothing be done when it needs to be done.
Okay, so I guess the other set of questions that I had were questions around enforceability. Okay. And there's quite a bit of language in here that provides the village with the opportunity, not the obligation, but the opportunity to do that. What then, should there be some kind of statement in here about remedy? In other words, what could in fact the village do and who'll be paying for it?
Well, one of the remedies that is here is that in addition to filing a lien and foreclosure, of course, there's a provision for recovery of attorney's fees. And I think that I'm trying to find it here. Yeah, I think. Oh, number 13. I had one last page, I didn't like it. The village shall have a right to seek and obtain injunctive relief to enforce these covenants at its option without proof of irreparable harm or lack of an adequate remedy at law. In other words, so if there's something you want to have the court order somebody to do rather than you village doing it, this gives you the authority to do that specifically. So that was.
So would the village then file liens against the homeowners, or how would that work?
Well, an injunctive one is in court. You have to go to court to get a court ruling to do it. Under the paragraph number 3, you don't have to go to court. You just have to give them notice. If they don't do it, then the village can step in and do it. You can give them a notice, and if they don't repay you within a specific period of time, 60 days after you demand to be reimbursed, then you can file a lien that covers both the open space and all of the houses in the subdivision.
Okay.
So I've tried to give you a non-judicial remedy to move forward quickly, and one you could go to court and enforce.
Okay. Were there any other questions from members of the board? Okay. Other questions? Okay. All right. Thank you. So let me call the question. Trustee Benavides?
Yes.
Trustee Kiefer?
Yes.
Trustee Ranovich?
Yes.
Trustee Rano, yes. Thank you. Okay. Okay. So number B, pursuant to section 3-11-6A1, NMSA 1978, subject to the approval of a majority of all members of the governing body, the mayor shall submit the names of employees to the Board of Trustees for confirmation. William Carlton, Agriculture Program Director. Administrator Avila.
Here it comes. Mayor and Board Trustees, after posting for the vacant position, interview committee recommended unanimously for the hiring of William Carlton. That was recommended by the administrator to the Mayor Pro Tem, who made appointment, now is before the Board of Trustees for confirmation.
Is there a motion to approve the confirmation of William Carlton?
I'll make a motion to approve the confirmation of Mr. William Carlton.
Okay, is there a second?
Yes, I'll second that.
Okay. Any discussion from the governing body? Trustee Benavides.
Is William Carlton here today?
He is.
Yes, Mr. Carlton is in the audience if you'd like him to approach the podium for specific questions
Yeah, I would. Thank
from
you.
the board. Or rather, introduce himself.
Thank you for stepping up, first of all. So you talk, I read your resume and the things that you've done, and you talked about sweet sorghum. So is sweet sorghum something different than just sorghum?
There's sorghum is traditionally grown as broomcorn or forage or as for molasses. And so when you grow sweet sorghum, it's a certain varieties that the stalk is used to be, it's pressed and then it's boiled down into molasses.
Oh, okay, so although it sounds like I'm asking you specific questions, this is part of me getting to know you, so.
Yeah.
So sweet sorghum, there is just regular sorghum and then there's sweet sorghum?
Yeah.
I didn't realize that, okay.
Usually when you hear about sorghum, it's being grown as feed or for fodder. But more traditionally, here in New Mexico, also in other parts of the country, is grown for molasses. And here in New Mexico, it first arrived in the late 19th century. There was a brief generation where it was sort of a popular thing to grow in certain communities, and it had a sort of a community building effect, and that's what I wrote about in that article. And then when sugar beets came to the West, it kind of subsided, and so it was a brief kind of moment there for sweet sorghum here.
It's a topic I could talk to you more about at a later time.
Okay, cool.
And something that I've had an interest in is to do at the Agri-Nature Center, and this might become more important since it appears that we're losing lavender in the village as a festival. I would like to explore the idea of doing a chili festival here, and what would be unique about that is people can come and try the different varieties of chilies, especially those things that grow better in this area, right? I don't want you don't have to, you can comment on that if you want to, but it's not a test question.
Okay. Well, I've done a lot of research on chilies and certainly get excited about chilies, and I've been talking to some of the volunteers and master gardeners at the Agri-Nature Center recently, and they've expressed interest in chili trials or something similar. So I think
you mentioned master gardeners here in the village. I assume you know Bill Shen.
Right. Yeah.
Good. I'm happy that you allowed me to talk to you about some things. Thank you. That's all I have.
Yeah. Trustee Kiefer?
Well, I'm not going to put you in the hot seat. I just want to welcome you.
Thank you.
Look forward to working with you, getting to know you. I mean, your resume and your experience is just amazing. I'm super impressed. Out of curiosity, how'd you find out about the job?
Through Sabrina Abedaka.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
Cool. No, you even published a book, so I'm excited to look for it and read it myself. And I love your passion for the land. I love your passion for all things New Mexico. And so me personally, I have the same passion. I don't have the, I have chickens. You know, it's about the extent of my hobby in farming, right? Livestock farming. But I want to expand that, and hopefully, the opportunity will present itself where I'm able to do that. And so I really look forward to picking your brain, getting to know you, hearing your ideas for the village, and really seeing how we can work on this and do things together. So welcome.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah.
Trustee Ranovich?
I'm not going to grill you either, but I wanted to thank you for applying. And like Trustee Kiefer, I'm really excited that you're here. I can't think of another person that would have been a better fit based on your resume. We've never met, but I can tell you I read Edible New Mexico every issue, and you do a great job did a great job with that. And I'm looking forward to reading your book as well. and working with you. So I'm really, really happy that you're here. And I wasn't sure if we'd find anyone that could replace Josh, and I think we have, and maybe more. So thank you and welcome.
Thank you.
I'm in the landscape industry as a profession, so I appreciate it as well because of that.
Likewise, I feel the same way, Willie. It's been wonderful meeting you and hope to continue working with you. And I think that you present yourself as a great choice for the village. And whatever we can do on the board in order to support what you want to do, please work with Administrator Avila, and the board will certainly try and support what you want to try and commit to improve the agricultural nature space. Okay, so thank you.
Appreciate that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Somebody called the question. Trustee Benavides?
Yes.
Trustee Kiefer?
Heck, yes.
Trustee Ranovich?
Absolutely.
Trustee Rhino, for sure. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Okay. Again, welcome. Discussion and approval of an order of business for the agenda format. Clerk City Molina?
Mayor Pro Tem, trustees, thank you. In several of our past meetings, we have been having the discussion of moving some of our items in various orders. So what's presented before you in the packet is a couple of suggested orders of business. One would be moving the trustee informal discussion to the beginning, as some of you had recommended. Others have recommended having all action items prior to trustee informal, so that way the residents would have an opportunity to participate as much as they could before we went to those department reports and trustee informal. So there's two orders of business that have some changes to it. The remainder that I've put in as samples, 1 through 6 are different orders of business taken from other municipalities or from the New Mexico Municipal League or Robert's Rules of Order. So tonight, I'd like to see if we can perhaps choose an agenda format so we can move forward in how we want to conduct business moving forward.
So before we go into discussion from the governing body, is there a motion to approve changes to the order of business agenda format?
I'll make a motion to approve changes to the business of order format.
Okay. Is there a second?
Yeah, I'll second that.
Okay. So let me open up for discussion. Trustee Benavides?
Yes, I have some things. So, yeah, I do like moving up trustee informal to be somewhere, what I see in the first option, actually. So looking at the topics, and so it's called trustee informal on this page 71. We've always called it trustee informal discussion. I don't know if I'm reading something into that. Okay. And I know it's important that the trustees be able to speak about things that they think are important before everybody leaves, which is why. And I know we always want a discussion, but the discussion part can get to be long. So I do worry about that. And I was wondering if that's where you were going by leaving the word discussion off of there. And I know Mayor Pro Tem sent us an email asking for ideas about how to streamline the Board of Trustees meetings. Mm-hmm. And this is part of it, right? And you had I think you had other ideas too. So I would just end this by saying I like the option 1 where trustee informal is. but I don't want it to get out of hand and now grow into something that's very big. And I don't know how to put a cap on that.
Trustee Kiefer?
I think I'm in agreement with trustee Benavides. I like option one. I would probably switch action items versus trustee informal. Again, I think we have action items which require our attention. That's what we were elected to do, more than to sit up here and pontificate to the people. And so I think they would appreciate us taking action on items that need to be heard. But yet we keep the informal discussion. Maybe there's a time limit, 5 minutes a trustee, 10 minutes a trustee type thing. 10 minutes gets long when that could be 40 minutes up here. But informal discussion is truly, there's no action taken, and the importance of our position is to handle the business for the village. So I like option one. I would switch the two items, and I would be in support of that.
And I'm okay with what you said.
Trustee Radovich?
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I like option one as well. The red lettering is just, what were you trying to get across with that, Danielle?
So those were the items that we would be moving, as you note, in our current agenda, trustee informal discussion as at the very end. Now it's moved up to behind presentations, and I highlighted the red items that those would be the movement items.
I see. I like 1, 2. I don't necessarily like the action items being first because they can take some time. For instance, all of the cases all of the meetings in the Jim Long cases, Guadalupe and Chavez case. So that would be one of the reasons. If the trustees informal would be limited, that may take care of that. The other thing I wanted to ask you is, since we're looking at this, is, as you know, I've been to a lot of meetings in other cities around the state with my work, and some of them have public comment about the items on the agenda for that night, and others have public comment not including, like us, the agenda for that night. Can you explain why that is, or why we're doing it one way and there are lots of other places that do it the other?
Mayor Pro Tem trustees, so we have public comment, as you know, up front. That's for any items not listed on the agenda. That is to highlight anything that's occurring in the village from our residents, to comment positive, negative, etc. The other items that we may come across specific to an agenda item is at the will of the chair. Not everything requires public comment. As you know, on our agenda tonight, it's mostly administrative decisions by the Board of Trustees. So those don't require public comment, and it's your decision and your discretion to make those decisions without input, i.e. financial business. That's your job. That doesn't require public comment. Some of these other items do not, so that's why it varies from one meeting to the next. It's based on the topic.
Got it. And I have nothing else.
Mayor, I know I'm out of order, but if I could comment on Trustee Radnovich's question.
Please do.
What you do here is a legal record that may be relied upon on appeals and that kind of thing. And it's much better if you have all of your record in a particular format, and rather than having to go through public comment and they say this about this item, this about this item, it's almost impossible to build a good public record for appeal and other purposes. So
it's
to
more
separate
efficient
them
and, yeah.
legally makes them a lot easier.
Makes sense. Thanks, Mr. Chappell.
Yeah, kind of as a, to follow on, I also like number one, but I'd also suggest that we move up action items because, you know, because as a result of the discussion that goes on those action items, it may trigger something in my head that I'd like to be able to discuss or bring forth to other members of the board to be thinking about. I do like the option though, and if we do that though, I'd still like to be able to limit the amount of time that we spend. But I think the action items are extremely important. I think that's what many of our residents show up, you know, to hear and understand. So I'd also go along with the amendment to switch trustee informal discussion with action items. I guess, is there other discussion from the board?
I think you make a good point, and your point is in agreement with what Trustee Jennifer made. The other point that I would make that would support what you two are saying is that, let's say there are action items and one of us should recuse ourselves on something. If we have a trustee informal, prior to that, we could accidentally, you know, get into the weeds of something we don't want to do, right?
You're absolutely correct.
Yeah, so.
Absolutely correct, yeah.
I'm in agreement with you guys.
Yeah, both good points.
Yeah.
So is there any further discussion from anybody? Okay, so let me call the question here. And again, this is to make, excuse me, so do we have to then make a amendment to the, you know, to what's proposed on item number 1?
Mayor, I would suggest an amendment to the motion to specifically say what the motion is.
Okay.
Who made the original motion?
Well, we
Trustee Radnovich.
made a motion to approve changes, yeah. So we just have to make an amendment to that. So would someone like to make the amendment to the, you know, to the application of number 1 as the decided
It's got to be one of you.
approach?
I agree to it, don't I?
But I think we still have to make the motion to amend.
I can change my motion.
You can amend your motion if your person who made the second would approve that, yes.
Sure. My amended motion includes these suggested changes. Call to order, roll call, in this order, Pledge of Allegiance, approval of the agenda, public comment, approval of minutes, presentations, action items, trustee informal, department reports, and then adjournment.
Okay with you? Okay. Okay. So we are now voting on the amendment?
Does that need a second?
Okay. So is there a second?
No, you're voting on the motion as amended. You've
As
already
amended, okay.
accepted the amendment, and so you just vote on the motion as amended.
Very good. Okay. So Trustee Benavides?
Yes.
Trustee Kiefer?
Yes.
Trustee Radnovich?
Yes.
Trustee Rhino, yes. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Danielle. Okay. We have a discussion for the administration to pursue funding for development of village property at 474 4th Street. Okay. So let's see. So Administrator Avila.
Yes, Mayor, Board of Trustees, we have a property at 8747 4th Street, sometimes known as the old Miller Feed property. One of the options there is to actually improve that property as a anchor for the open space, as further development of village facilities. And so this question is whether you want me to pursue that and pursue funding for that development.
Okay. Is there a motion to approve the funding for 8747 4th Street? Well, let me make a correction here. It's to It's to pursue funding. Is that correct? Okay. So, so can I then, Mr. Chappell, can I amend the motion?
Mayor, I think you called for a motion to that effect. Nobody made the motion yet. And then you corrected it. So I think it can only be to pursue funding for improvements.
Okay. So is there a motion then to approve pursuing funding for 874 4th Street?
I make a motion to approve funding for 874 4th Street.
Okay. Is there a second?
I hesitate because I don't know what the vision is for any kind of building that we build. And I was hoping we could have a discussion, but I will second it for the sake of discussion.
That's what we'll do. We'll discuss it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I will second the
Okay.
motion.
It's not included on the agenda tonight. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, not tonight. Okay, so discussion from the governing body. Trustee Benavides?
Well, I mean, if there is a vision for, if we're building, we're constructing some building, I don't know what that is. What do we do with that building? And I don't, you know, to me, this is this open space has lots of potential. You know, sometimes we talk about having a community center, right? That would be an ideal location. We also know we have bad egress to that, to the Del Norte open space. And, you know, I'm thinking if we have a balance of our open space bond money, that if we could acquire some property that's just a little bit to the north of the open space that we already have, that would be a much safer egress, and then the possibilities for that property really open up. So it feels like what we're doing now is premature, because we haven't discussed this with the public, and I don't know what it is that we're going to do with the building.
Trustee Kiefer?
I guess I see this a little differently, and let me tell you why, and that's the reason I moved, because if I understand this correctly, this is just to pursue, which means we don't even know how much money we could get. If we go before this year's legislative committee to ask for money, I mean, we know that New Mexico's still in a surplus position, so now would be a good time to ask for money. And I don't think it commits us to a building, to a barn, to not fixing the easements. It leaves the options open. It just allows us to explore what monies are available to be able to help us. So I don't understand why we would wait and let the perfect be the enemy of what we can do right now, especially while we have the opportunity for funding with the state, and the state's running in a surplus. I don't, you know, I do agree with Trustee Benavides in the sense that I think this property has enormous potential. Even currently from the egress and ingress of the property, I mean, I think that can, without acquiring any property, I think we can take care of that issue by removing the little house that's there on the side, and making that an egress out of the property and make it a horseshoe. You have an ingress and an egress. So I think by really just saying, no, we don't even want to pursue money is dangerous when we're in a surplus position with the state, and it doesn't commit us to anything.
Can I clarify that? Sure. So here's the issue. I think the options are, there's two different sizes of metal buildings, like 30 by 60 is one of them. Well, I mean, after we've really thought through what we want to do with that space, what if we really want a 50 by 100 building? And now we pursued the funding for something smaller that doesn't fit our needs. I'm worried that precludes going back and trying to ask for money, saying, well, we asked for the wrong size of building, we really need a bigger building. 30 by 60, I think that was the largest of the two options. It's really not that much space.
Mayor Pro Tem, may I?
Go ahead.
Mr. Avila, I mean, and maybe you know something I don't know, Trustee Benavides, but I know that there's this talk of a building, but I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Avila, this is probably just kind of thrown out there so that we have something, but it's not any type of commitment to this being what we have to put out there, correct?
Yeah, Trustee Kiefer, Board of Trustees. These are estimates for some basic buildings and rehab of a building. Those are two different options there. That's just to give you an idea of what type of money we need at least start budgeting for. There are probably other costs, so we need to have a better estimate to go after. I didn't say put a number up here for that reason, because it's going to probably be more than just the estimated cost. There may be other agreements, there may be some more planning involved. There definitely would be more planning involved when we get the design and so forth. Also, the public input. So this is a matter to allow me to get started. Beforehand, you'd have this put in front of you as a contract to sign. I'm going through the process here because I want the public to know that we're going to pursue money for this, and then we'll go through the process of seeing what exactly they want out there. The community building is one of the things that is called for. It should be in the nature of the open space. Perhaps it has some other benefits that are recreational. And recreational, you can put that in quotes for whichever kind of recreational the public wants. So this is the start of what hopefully will be the development of open space as a place to go and have a place to park, have community, and expand the uses of the open space.
I mean, so I know I'm cutting in front of you, sorry. But we submitted our ICIP list, right? Shouldn't this be part of that process?
We do have open space as one of our CIP items, so this can be considered part of that development.
Trustee Kiefer, any other comment?
No.
Okay. Trustee Radovich?
I think the way that this was put together strikes me as a little too, how should I put it? I too would like to have a public discussion about what that space could be. And I've mentioned this before, the Del Norte open space as well as that building. I think especially in the Albuquerque metro area, unlike Santa Fe, we're very fixated on building anew instead of saving something that could be historic. I remember that building from when I worked at Yanamoto's when it was where Paseo is back in the 70s. And I believe it's Adobe, I'm not sure. I think the very first thing I saw was, let's tear it down. The second thing I saw was, let's make it a metal building. And I know the barn, which is a metal building, is already there. I would prefer that, and I agree with what Trustee Kiefer said about the legislature. But often in New Mexico, we go for doing something first and not thinking it through. And so, what is it? Is it a bus stop? Is it a stop on the bike path? Is it gateway to the open space? Is it a competitor El Bruno's that we lease out to a restaurant or something like that? I think we determine what the programming is for the building or the space first, and then we start thinking about what kind of money we want to go after. Tearing it down was what really struck me the wrong way. Let's see, what else? I would not want to see that become a metal building in place of the building that's there. for one. And I've been in that building, but I would like to see it again.
Trustee Radovich, are you saying I said tear it down?
What?
Who's saying tear it down?
The first thing in our report is a proposal to tear it down. The second thing is what to replace it with. The
Now-
third thing is what to replace it with that's not a metal building.
Now, this is just to tear down the house part, correct? And not the full building?
Yeah, so
That's not the way
That has the
that's not the way it's
asbestos?
done.
if I can clarify, there's two options here. One is a metal building. That's just, how can you inexpensively put something there? So that was, we asked for that number. The other one is to refurbish the buildings and add on a component, which, for instance, bathrooms that are necessary there, need to be connected to sewer, because all you got is an old failed septic system. So that would be attached to the back of the building. So that's a refurbish. That's one of the two options, which are about the same price, but it's smaller. So that little add-on is smaller, but it also includes fixing the other buildings. Now, the third consideration is if you didn't want to do that and you wanted to tear down a building, it's only going to cost you $18,000. So just giving you some cost estimates, but there's two basic ideas here. One is brand new, and the other one is refurbished but add an amenity, which, for instance, bathrooms would be necessary for a public building. So that's what's there. That's what I tried to explain before. And it's really, do we want to go out and look for funding, get funding, secure funding, while we go through this process of seeing, what the public wants to see. Too many times we've, had a design put before us that says, this is what you're going to do. And that's not what we're looking for, just kind of,
As
here's
in
some
the
options.
old city hall, or village hall.
Right. So you don't want that, but you do want to have funds ready to do something, because otherwise you're going to miss out.
So when you go after these funds, do you have to say what you're going to do with it?
I provided these two estimates to say that, at least we can do something with this amount of funding, that we can provide either of these two buildings. That was my
Well, see,
baseline.
that's, once you say, you bring up the options of two different buildings, metal buildings, I think you're telling people what you're going to do with that money. And I'm afraid that precludes you from going back and say, we got a better vision of what we want to do with this property. That 30 by 60 is not big enough. We need something much bigger. We put it in the wrong
Two
location.
estimates that allow me to move forward to look for some funding. You can add on to that, but this is just a baseline to say, okay, this is what can be done.
Who provided us with these?
Yeah, I'm not,
estimates?
that's, we shouldn't be doing that, giving
Well,
out
let me
to
ask, what type of company?
There's a construction company that's built several buildings around the state.
And then who provided, oh yeah, we did, it does say who provided us an estimate for tearing it down.
Right, and this is, again, that's the third thing that you can do is don't do either of those two, and just, if you want to, tear down a building and move forward with a bigger driveway, that's one thing you could do, but just so you have those prices before you.
I think I'm done with my questions.
Okay, so we've got some agreement, some areas that we have to still kind of focus on. I don't see a problem in at least alerting people that we're looking for money. But I do certainly appreciate the fact that we need to have a plan in place. And as Administrator Avila has suggested, that would be started, pretty quickly here. So that it's going to take some time in order for money to be available, as we have found out, in other kinds of projects in the village. So I think it's a good idea to at least start the process, to take a look around and see what's there. And in the interim, for us to, as a staff, certainly to start the process involve the community in terms of getting their input so that we have more clarity. I think in terms of looking for funding, I'm not certain about the degree of specificity that's required in order to go after, any kind of state or foundation funding. I've been involved in other projects where it's been very, very light in terms of being specific about how it's going to be spent. We're trying to provide an opportunity that could improve the quality of life of individuals in the village. That may include opportunities for meeting space, that may include opportunities for recreation, that may include et cetera, without having to be definitive on what would have to be included in the plan. So I would certainly suggest that, or like to see us move forward to start this process. And a part of it, again, takes a look at the funding that's available. The other part is to start looking more closely at what the plan would look like for that facility. Okay, and not miss out then on the opportunity that might come to us in terms of the funding.
So you're saying we're not going to be committed to any kind of structure or demolition at this point in time?
Board of Trustees, that's exactly the case, and any contract would have to come before you for approval. That's the end and bottom line. But getting there, we want to go through a process where the public gets to weigh in on what they'd like to see. Would they like to see that Adobe refurbished? Would they like to see something else?
Okay.
Some other discussion from the board? Okay. Okay, so.
One other thing.
Yeah.
I feel pretty strongly that we need to have some kind of vision for that space. And so I know that typically for the legislature, those requests come in December and in January for the legislature. So I'd like to see if we could have some kind of idea of what we're talking about here, and I'm still not convinced that tearing it down is the right starting point in terms of even the planning. So did the contractor that you talked to talk to you at all about the existing structure?
So the two options here, one is metal building, don't even deal with the front one. And the other option is refurbish the front one with some amenities that make it workable for a larger community space, which are bathrooms, basically, re-roofing, and bringing the buildings up to code. And I say that because they're existing and they'll have some leeway. So yes, we had that conversation, and the estimate, and again, roughly about the same, smaller space for refurbishment, refurbishing it versus a larger building. So that's the estimates I got for those two. The conversation about what it takes to demolish is so that we can have a price there. And it's not the first option, it's just that was out there is, do you want to make room? And so you know what the cost is. So if people are worried about their pocket versus what that building looks like, they might vote for, do something else, but that's not
what I was asking. I'm sorry, I may not have said it correctly. Often when you talk to a contractor, they'll tell you this building isn't worth saving, or they'll say, this could be a good building. Did the contractor offer anything like that to give you any clue as to the shape of that building as it exists right now?
Right. So as it exists right now, there'll have to be treatment. The floors are asbestos likely have to come up and be gone. So you have to do a new floor. Okay, so that's one of the things that you'll have to do. The interiors of the house, not the old bar, are going to need a lot more work. So yes, that was part of the discussion.
Okay, okay. Thank you.
Okay, so I want to then, the question's over, let me call the question. This is a motion again to approve, excuse me, to approve the pursuit of funding for the property at 8747 4th Street. So let me call the question. Trustee Benavides.
Yes.
Trustee Kiefer.
Yes.
Trustee Ranovich.
Yes, but I would like to, before we even go to the legislature for a request, I would like to bring this back to the trustees to talk about.
Okay.
And to talk about what grant funding or legislative funding we might be pursuing. In the future, it might.
Okay. Oh, go ahead, yeah.
In the future, it might be good for us to talk about things that just pop up on our agenda beforehand, so that we're not faced with trying to figure out what's on the minds of our other trustees or village, appointments and employees. Just saying.
Mayor, point of order, I think a conditional vote, yes, is treated as a no vote under Robert's Rules of Order because he conditioned it on certain other things.
Oh, I see. So I can't condition it. I can just.
I think it's a yes or a no vote, or it doesn't count.
Okay, so that means my vote is null and void at this point.
It's the same as a no vote.
Unless you want to revote with yes without conditions.
Oh, I see.
Or no. I mean,
Yeah.
I think a conditional yes vote is treated under
So it's
Robert's
too
Rules
late
of Order as a no vote.
It's too late to put conditions on it.
Correct.
Okay, I'll vote yes. But I do, I would appreciate this coming to us before just showing up on our agendas.
Trustee Rano, yes. Okay, thank you. Okay, let's see, so where we're at. Okay, so discussion and direction to the administration to continue developing a Main Street platform for economic support of local village businesses, including commercial 4th Street, as a focal point of local attraction and events. Administrator Avila?
Mayor Pro Tem, Board of Trustees, I'd like to ask Sky DeVore from Main Street Organizing to come up. She's here. Okay, there you are. Can't hide. And so let me just preface this that we did ask as administration for help informing an organization that the business community can work with for much of what we need to do in the village around attracting more business and the supporting local businesses. So with that, we contacted some help for organizing Main Street, and with that, I'll go ahead and let Sky give us a progress or status report.
Thank you, Administrator Avila, Mayor Pro Tem, and Board of Trustees. I recognize some of you from our meetings that we've had, so it's great to see you guys again. Inside your packet tonight, you will see a PowerPoint presentation that I did not plug in, but it talks about basically what our road to Los Ranchos Main Street is. Some of it will be things that you've seen before if you've gone to our meetings. We've had 2 of them now and had great turnout from the local merchants and a whole bunch of interest. And it just really shows how many main streets there are, what some of the advantages are of that, and then the timeline moving forward for Los Ranchos to develop a main street, which would be that in 2025, we would have our first rural project initiative, in 26 our second, and then we enter the accreditation accelerator in 2027. So it's kind of a long road, but we've made lots of progress. And then there's some examples of eligible projects in your packet. Please ignore the Miller's Feed Barn, because that is not going to be one. Just kind of the things that we're able to do. And some of the advantages to this are that we're eligible for funding allocations through New Mexico Main Street and the Economic Development Program. We get training and all kinds of business help for our local merchants to do things like placemaking, creative economy promotion, business development, redevelopment. So those are some of the advantages. And then you'll see the action items page in your presentation. And I'm just trying to go a little bit quickly, so I know you'll have questions in a minute. So we've established our group, and we've got a board of directors. We have 6 business owners and future business owners who have property who have agreed to help us with our board. And we've already started our initial programming because we were under the gun to get something out in the village vision. And then, so the next thing that we would do is get an MOU or a resolution from you guys that you want us to do this at some point, or direction to Administrator Avila that we're going to move forward. And then we would start the nonprofit. Then that nonprofit does project selection. We don't want to start the nonprofit first, because if the Board of Trustees is not behind it, then we have an orphaned nonprofit out there that has no purpose. And then we would move forward with contract, submitting our project, and then getting funding during the 2025 legislative session. But some of the programming that we've already started working on doing is that we're going to have a business workshop for small businesses in the district, hopefully at the Anderson House, where we're going to bring in a social media expert and someone to help businesses who manufacture things become New Mexico True Certified. Steelbender Brewyard is making a special beer to celebrate the 66th anniversary of Los Ranchos on Route 66 that will be released and sold in package so that other restaurants around the village can have it. We're going to have a Spirit of 66 decorating contest where businesses do holiday and Route 66 related decorations outside, and the community can vote on it. And then we're going to do the old Route 66 car show, where various locations on December 29th, we have old cars set up, and we've put in the village vision for locals to be able to contact us via email if they would like to participate in these. So we're getting community engagement. And then my contact information is on the last page for you guys if you have further questions beyond today.
Okay, so before we get into questions, I need to ask, is there a motion to approve the administration to continue developing a Main Street platform?
I make motion to approve continuing to support a Main Street platform.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay. Discussion from the governing body. Trustee Benavides?
Okay, so all we're approving.
You're on, I was checking.
All we're approving is for you to pursue a Main Street platform, right? So there's a lot more to come.
Oh, yeah.
And I just want to make sure we all understand that. So we don't know, how what the format is, who participates, and those are the kind of things that, tell me what kind of things we need to put together. Yeah.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem and Trustee Benavides. So what we're going to do next is we would start working on some kind of a resolution for you guys to approve, saying that you have a desire to work with the Main Street. So that's kind of step one in our process, the process under Main Street. And I've submitted some examples from Albuquerque that are really just that, examples of how they do that. We do have the board formed, and one of the suggestions that we have is that the Board of Trustees appoint a representative, either from you guys or a community person that you trust to sit on that board, so that there is some kind of oversight in reporting back to you. And then with that support from the Board of Trustees, we would go forward with community conversations about project selection. And project selection can be as easy as We're going to do some things to support the creative economy, or any number of different things. There's kind of a summary page of options in there for you. So those would be our next steps.
And I assume this is to be determined, but does the Board of Trustees, do they vote to provide you with seed money? Is that typically done?
Mayor Pro Tem and Trustee Benavides, potentially. So right now, I'm acting as kind of like the interim get started executive director. The hope would be that under the contract, it would say here would be your deliverables and contingent on funding from the legislature or some other means. As you guys determine, the budget for these projects would be X, Y, Z.
So you'll continue to walk us through this process?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Trustee Kiefer?
Hi, Sky. Hello. I am super excited about this. I can't wait to hear about the Board of Directors. I'm sorry I missed the last meeting. I didn't know about it. Hopefully that won't happen again. And I will be present at any future meetings just because I'm really excited about this. From a personal standpoint, my aunt by marriage is the president of the Raton Main Street, and they were just recognized for finalists nationally. So I've got the inside too for in case we need help on a smaller municipality that's being recognized nationally. So that's super exciting. But the fact that the turnout is growing is really cool to me. I've got so many super ideas for this concept that it just makes me excited, and it gives me a passion of actually like doing something positive for the village that I can hopefully impact. So thank you for all of your work. Thank you for stepping forward. Thank you for Administrator Avila and for Ms. Legant in helping us get this all put together. So I'm excited. Thank you.
Trustee Radovich?
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I have some questions.
Yes.
Don't take this wrong, but are you with Main Street New Mexico, or who are you exactly?
Mayor Pro Tem and Trustee. So my name is Sky DeVore. I was the president of Nob Hills Main Street for 4 years during COVID.
Nob Hill.
And I work with Kim Legant. I've got lots of experience in getting funding through various nonprofits like the New Mexico Distillers Guild and some of their applications and stuff through Main Street in the Economic Development Program. And so she asked me if I knew anyone who had experience with Main Street, and I said, why, yes, I do.
And I'm sorry, who did you talk to? I didn't hear that.
Who did I talk to?
You said you talked to?
Oh, Kim Legant.
Oh, Kim. Oh, got it.
Yes.
Hi, Kim. Yes, I know who she is. So you've worked with New Mexico, were you the executive director of Nob Hill Main Street?
I was the board chair and went through 2 executive directors during the COVID time period. So I was a board member and then a president. I've had a business in Nob Hill since 2011.
Okay. And you still have that business?
I do.
Okay. So I have a few questions.
Yes.
And I work with Main Street, our company works with Main Street quite a bit. My understanding is that Main Street requires a person to be an executive director, I believe full-time, and that the village pays for that person's salary.
So Main Street does not require you to have a full-time executive director. They can be part-time. And what you do is through your contract that you sign later down the road once the nonprofit is formed, then what you do is you get allocation of funds either through legislative allotment or some other source of funding to pay that person to be the executive director. But until we are actually a Main Street, which wouldn't be until 2028, that's not a requirement.
Got it.
Because we have to go through the 2 rounds of Rural Community Initiative and then the Main Street Accelerator Program.
So if we don't get funding for that Main Street coordinator, or are they called executive directors?
They're called executive directors.
Then the village pays that salary.
No, they have the option, the Main Street does, of doing their own fundraising, and National Main Street actually looks to see what your funding mix is, how much of it is grants that you can apply for as a nonprofit, how much of it is based off of events that you hold and sponsorships, and then how much is given based off of your local governing body, but you have to have the cooperation of your local governing body in order to be certified.
But there is the potential that the village is going to pay for this person.
No.
No.
No. The village could say, we're going to give you a contract for $50, and then it is up to the board of directors of the nonprofit to fundraise to be able to pay for a person to run the organization, just like any other
So
nonprofit.
it won't cost the village anything to have an executive director?
It shouldn't if we do it right.
Okay, okay. The other thing I know about New Mexico Main Street is it requires participation from the business community. I see you're already got some businesses, 5, I think you said?
We have 6.
6. Are they, can you say who they are? Are they, or what types of businesses they are? Is it a wide range of different types of businesses and different sizes of business?
It is. I think most of them are smaller businesses, which are kind of what we want. However, I've also spoken to 2 of the larger businesses who will participate on a committee basis, but don't want to take on a board seat. So there is, I mean, as you can see by Steel Bender helping us with the beer, they're not ready to take on a board seat, but they are definitely ready to be supportive. And I can send you all the list of who those people are.
I'd love to see it, yeah. The other thing that I know from working with Main Street is that if for some reason Main Street, if for some reason the village doesn't participate at a level that Main Street requires, that it can get dropped as a Main Street town, city, village, whatever. Is that correct too?
That is correct. You have to have an interaction with your local governing body or lose your accreditation. You go through an annual reaccreditation process where New Mexico Main Street comes in, checks your documents, has a meeting, invites the local governing body to come in, and then sends it off to Main Street America for their seal of approval to officially call yourself a Main Street.
Okay. And thank you for clarifying, Sky. That's great.
No problem.
So I just wanted us as a village to be aware of those things because there are responsibilities associated with this and responsibilities that aren't just the business owners, but the village itself. And I was led to believe something different than what you said, so I'm happy to hear that. I was led to believe that the village has to pay that person's salary, not the nonprofit.
Right.
So that's great.
And Mayor Pro Tem and Trustee, what it generally is and the way that it works in Nob Hill is that Nob Hill Main Street has a contract with the city of Albuquerque to provide a scope of services, including doing Taste of Nob Hill and all of these various events, holding X number of public safety meetings with merchants, all of that stuff. And then they get a chunk of money for providing that economic development service.
From the city.
From the city. And some of that goes to pay the executive director. And they do have a full-time one. But for a very long time in Carlsbad, they had a part-time one. And so I think that it's designed so that smaller municipalities have the freedom to structure that contract as long as it falls within those guidelines of what they want and deem as supportive. And so when we get to that point, we'll kind of see what it will be, but hopefully by that point, the Main Street organization is providing enough economic development benefit and has achieved other sources of funding so that it is really feasible and maintainable. That's why it's a 3-year process. They want to make sure it's going to be maintainable.
Yeah. So those are most of my comments. There could be some money that the village, you can see I'm worried about spending recently. And so there could be some money that the village does put up for having a Main Street organization. Just wanted us all to be aware of that. Thank you. Thanks.
Sky, I don't have any further questions. And so you've already got a board in place, and obviously you have some activities planned already. So our question here is, again, excuse me, so the motion was to approve the administration to continue developing a Main Street platform. So let me, are there any further comments or questions from the board? Okay, so let me call the question. Trustee Benavides?
Yes?
Trustee Kiefer?
Yes.
Trustee Ranovich?
Yes.
Trustee Rhino, yes. Thank you very much, Scott. Looking
Thank
forward to
you all
working
for
with
your
you.
time.
Okay. Okay, discussion approval of the Village of Los Ranchos sponsoring the 20th annual Stop and Shop event scheduled for December 7th and 8th, 2024. Okay. So is there a motion to approve the village sponsoring the 20th annual Stop and Shop?
Mayor Pro Tem, trustees, would you like to have Administrator Avila explain a little bit about that prior to your motion?
Excuse me. Okay, go ahead.
Well, the explanation, I believe, is on that request from the merchants. In essence, this is a marketing effort where we leverage the business's contribution. And that is us sponsoring the 20th annual Stop and Shop. And this is mainly made up of advertising in the Village Vision magazine, and including our website.
So let me now backtrack and make sure that we're correct here. Okay, so, excuse me. So is there a motion to approve the village sponsoring the 20th annual Stop and Shop?
Sure, I'll do a motion to approve the 20th annual Stop and Shop event.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay. Discussion from the governing body? Trustee Benavides?
I'm in support of this, but just a question. This is really called the North Valley Holiday Stop and Shop, and some of these businesses, not a problem, are outside the village. Although I wish a few would allow themselves to be in the village. So my question is, are there other entities that are sponsoring it? And is it just the Village of Los Ranchos?
Let Trustee Avila have a crack at
So,
this.
Board of Trustees, the businesses are the ones, the businesses on this list are the ones that have put forth funds to do the marketing all year round, not just now, but for the Stop and Shop.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, I mean, there's what's the name of the association? There's like an Alameda Association, right? And some of these things
There's
are.
North Valley Coalition.
But are they involved in any of this, or is it just?
I have a request from village residents that own businesses that are on this. This is where this came from. This is the 20th year.
Oh, yeah, I'm in favor of it. I'm just wondering if there's other entities that should be involved.
Probably,
Yeah.
but this is what I know of, and it's just us supporting it in the magazine, and
Yeah.
they conduct their annual event.
Okay, that's all.
Trustee Kiefer?
I have no questions.
Trustee Ranovich?
John, do we have any, I'm in support of it as well. Do we have any information on how well the businesses do in the village during this Stop and Shop? Do we have any kind of gross receipts or any kind of information that, just curious more than anything?
Yes, this question's been asked about the Lavender Festival and these events as well. I mean, you can compare to COVID, and that's when, everything dropped off, and you can say, well, this is what actually is supposed to happen versus a non-activity. So that's one of the methodologies that's been used around the state. So that's what we have, but we know that advertising works. We know that campaigns work, and a holiday event should work, and they keep doing it probably because it works.
No other questions?
I don't have any further questions at all, Mr. Avila. So, excuse me. So let me then call the question to approve the village sponsoring the 20th annual Stop and Shop. Trustee Benavides?
Yes.
Trustee Kiefer?
Yes.
Trustee Radovich?
Yes.
Trustee Randall, yes. Okay, thank you. Okay. Department reports, they're all available in the packet. What I would recommend is that if there are specific questions for each of the departments, please feel free to reach out to them, okay, and be able to get any kind of questions answered. I'd like to then move on, though, to trustee informal discussion, and give us all an opportunity to provide any other kind of input that you'd like. And so, Trustee Benavides, can we start with you?
You certainly can. So the woman that spoke about the weeds on the Del Norte open space, we really should do something about that, especially, I really go after, whenever I see tumbleweeds or goat heads, those are like high priority items to me. And I feel like if everybody was to feel like I feel, those weeds would disappear. We wouldn't have to deal with them anymore. But yeah, I mean, we harp on people about, cleaning up their property, so we should set a good example. Let's see. I know the apartments at Palindrome is a sticky issue, and it's certainly I wish it looked different than what we see. But I can tell you, I talked to 3 businesses on 4th Street that basically serve food, and they're struggling, and they're waiting for these apartments to open up. So I just want to mention that. So we've talked about water rights quite a bit, and I know, I think it was the last P&Z meeting, which I watched online. We talked about, can we transfer, if we have these different projects and they're being developed and they once held surface water rights, can we transfer them to the Agri-Nature Center? Because apparently we have, I don't know how many acres, like 5 or 7 acres that don't have surface water rights, and in the past we've leased groundwater rights, and we no longer have that lease. And I believe Attorney Chappell spoke about that surface water rights are non-transferable unless it's pre-1907. Right? So looking back at the property at the Agri-Nature Center where we do not have those water rights, I'm assuming they must have had them at one time, and given that they're gone now, I'm assuming that they were transferred because they were pre-1907. Is that correct?
The surface water rights are transferable if you own them, even though they're not pre-1907. I was referring to those that are allocated by the MRGCD. Those are not transferable to separate them from the property themselves. Those that were subsequent to 1907 typically don't have a lot of value because of that. I went back and looked at the documents where the Agri-Nature Center was acquired, part of it from the Andersons way back when. And Andersons reserved all of the pre-1907 water in that transaction, and the only thing that came was whatever MRGCD water was there. I don't know what happened in the last one, but at the Agri-Nature Center, that's what happened to the contract.
I mean, that must have all been property that could be irrigated from the ditch at one time. And so my question is, how did we lose that? Given that you can't transfer it out.
Well, I was not involved in that transaction, but the transaction documents make it very clear that they reserved and didn't transfer to the village any pre-1907 water rights. That was the earlier one, not the most recent one.
Okay, so we lost it because it was pre-1907.
Well, we lost them because the Andersons reserved them. They didn't sell them to the village when we bought that property.
Okay. Let's see. So I watched, again, I did watch the October 8th P&Z meeting. And on the agenda was the item where the commissioners were looking at the plat, and where would they look at the site? The plat review and two different things, right? Could remind me what that was.
Trustee Benavides, there was a sketch plat.
Sketch plat.
And a sketch plat review site development plan.
Okay.
Both of them just reviews.
And I have to tell you, the commissioners seemed very confused as to what their expectation was during this review. And I thought that you could have helped them with that, saying things like, well, we're not voting on anything. That was confusing. I think that there's a time when they thought they were voting on something. And finally, I think you said we're taking your comments. I believe that's how you stated it. But I think the background information would have been helpful. For example, there's no injunction on the construction, so there's boundaries on what can be done, right? And I don't think people quite understood that. And I thought a better job could have been done outlining what the expectation was of the county, of the P&Z commissioners.
Trustee Benavides, this is not something I was actually called on to do, but the procedure for a sketch plat is that ordinance says specifically no votes will be taken. So that's in the ordinance, and so that was what was being followed. What I got from that meeting, and which I think is really true, I don't think the commissioners understood what they could and could not change about what had already been approved. And I can't tell them that. I said you're just like starting from scratch, but everybody knows as a practical matter, there's a building sitting there. So, theoretically starting from scratch, they pretty well identified, what are our options, and that's not something I can tell them.
Will we do a similar thing here at the Board of Trustees? We don't vote on anything, it's just a review?
No, the only non-voting sketch plat, site plan review that happens is the Planning and Zoning Commission. The next round will be that the preliminary plat and preliminary site development plan will go to Planning and Zoning. They will make recommendations by vote, and it will come to the Board of Trustees for approval under the ordinance procedures.
Okay, final thing. I think this was in the department reports. There was a discussion about the intersection of 4th Street and Osuna and the traffic. And I just want to throw this out there because I keep thinking about the intersection, and I know the constraints are pretty tight as to what can be done. It's going to be difficult to add any more lanes on Osuna. And it's a conundrum, right? Because do we make it easier for the commuters that are trying to just pass through the village, go through that intersection, and what if we widen it and we just end up with the same problem all over again? So I just want to throw this out here because I'm thinking we're focusing on the wrong thing. I think the solution to that intersection actually resides at 2nd and Osuna. And that's outside the village, but I think that says that we need to be working with other jurisdictions at with city of that, on that intersection, because I don't think we can fix Fourth and Osuna. That's all I have.
Trustee Kiefer?
I only had a couple things. One is, I don't know if it was just an area of the village or if it was the whole village, but I know, at least me personally and my street was impacted by waste management not coming
Yeah.
on Friday.
Yeah, that
Was
happened.
that, okay.
Not this past Friday, but the Friday before.
No, this past Friday.
Oh.
This past Friday, and it happened prior to. But I know it happened this past Friday for sure because my husband was out of town, so I had to go get it. But, yeah, so, and,
What's up with that?
yeah, and I didn't get any communication from them, so I don't know if anybody got communication.
Do we get a refund?
I got none. It happened to us as well.
So thought maybe it's something that, I don't know, next time Waste Management's here, we ask them about if there's a deviation, how do they notify us? Only specifically too, because I'm seeing a lot of raccoons coming out and trash cans being out a little longer. Last thing we need is our trash strewn all over the street. So that's that. The second thing is I don't know where we're at with our engagement, kind of going to Trustee Benavides's concern on Second and Osuna and engaging other public partners, but I think we definitely need to engage Bernalillo County and City of Albuquerque now that they have formed the commission on the commission to buy property and construct affordable housing, specifically at the Vineyard location. Because we know that traffic's already an issue on Vineyard. We've heard it multiple times. With the acquisition of that land, we know that it's inevitably going to be turned into apartments, and we need to have some type of voice or say at that table, and how we go about that and what's already been done. Because not only is that going to impact Vineyard Road, it's going to impact Fourth and Osuna, which then will impact Second and Osuna, and so on and so forth. So I want to make sure that we don't lose sight of those projects. That's it.
Trustee Ranovich?
I just have a one thing, really. The village has been preoccupied with a few projects that aren't necessarily doing what I think we want them to do. And so I think we need to start thinking more about Rio Grande, Ortega, and El Pueblo, possibly even Ranchitos, but definitely Rio Grande. I've talked to a lot of, I wouldn't say a lot, but I've talked to a handful of constituents in the past month, and a lot of people are more concerned about the traffic speed and the traffic congestion along those three streets than 4th Street. And I think we need to start thinking about what will make this village a little more protected from the commuter traffic and the thrust of people that are just using Rio Grande and Ortega and El Pueblo as pass-throughs, especially during events that happen on I-40, especially, or I-25 to some degree, that use us as their route when they can't get across the river at I-40, or it screws up their transportation along I-25 when something happens there. I see it as being from having talked to residents, being a big deal that we're really not paying that much attention to. I don't even know if those streets were they were on the ICIP. So I think we need to really work on making the village a more protected kind of place for residents. I was told by one of the people I talked to that in Los Angeles, and this is pretty I'd say it's a rough measure, but in Los Angeles, what they're starting to do is actually close streets at night. Close streets after a certain hour. They have gates, they put them down, and they just close it to traffic. And, you know, that's pretty, I mean, it sort of sounds appealing in some ways, but in other ways, it's obviously not being a good partner with maybe our neighbors. But I think we really need to start looking at those three streets particularly. I know Ortega's been on our radar for a long time. I think El Pueblo hasn't, but it should be. And they race down El Pueblo because it's so long. And I've seen so many people go through that stop sign on El Pueblo. It doesn't do a thing. And Rio Grande would really be a biggie. I was even seeing and Fred, you might be interested in this, in the University neighborhood, there are these sort of miniature roundabouts, and they don't.
That's right.
They didn't change the intersection itself. They just put a roundabout in the middle to make it a little slower when people go around those intersections. And I could see something like that, or even mid-block, you know, roundabouts or diamonds, sure. Along Rio Grande particularly. And it needs to be done in the right way. And I don't think we're doing very much. I know you get comments about it a lot.
Mayor,
on those streets.
Pro Tem, Trustee Radnovich, my hopes is to bring you a report in November on the traffic studies that we have been doing on Ortega, on El Pueblo, on Green Valley, on Chavez, which will include traffic counts and speed, along with options that you all are going to have to make a decision on.
Yeah.
I will tell you that in my research so far, the traffic counts in some areas are below what they were 20 years ago.
Interesting.
And I realize that people don't want to hear that, but that is not only from the Council of Governments, but that is from our counts as well. Now, that doesn't minimize whatever, but one of the things I will, and different traffic calming measures on Ortega, on El Pueblo. So I hope to have a presentation to you at the November meeting, which will give you all the data that you want to see.
And I know those residents on Ortega really appreciate what we've done so far.
Right, but I will tell you one of the things on Ortega, they may not want to hear this, but the traffic counts are lower than they were 20 years ago.
That may have been because the Paseo wasn't there?
Well, and it could be.
No, that was more than 20.
But again, my point is, we're going to provide you the data, and then that's something that some of these traffic calming measures, I think the village has the ability to do right away, and others are going to take engineering to come up and decide how you're going to put those mini roundabouts in the middle of the road, or bulb outs, or whatever.
I'm glad you brought up engineering, because I think planners ought to be more involved, and Maria knows that I feel this way.
But you have to have an engineer approve it.
You do.
So that's what I'm saying.
Because you have to have an engineer's stamp. Right. They have to be on the team, but they don't necessarily need to lead the team.
No, that's right, but they have to approve the design, they have to approve everything to meet. But again, those are hopefully in November, I will make that presentation to you all. We'll have all the data, all the information, I think, that not only the transportation analysis started on, but then that we've also followed up on to come up with the additional information on all those roads.
Okay, thank you, Fred. Thank
Yeah,
you.
I think that's
Yeah.
awesome. Thanks, Fred.
I think one of the things, by the way, that's attendant to this as well is to let everyone know that on October 28th, there's going to be a meeting. It's the 28th, I believe, here at Village Hall with Representative Hockman Vihil. And the purpose of that meeting is to talk about how to reduce the noise on Paseo, okay, on both sides, from both sides of Paseo. So I hope that folks show up for that and to express their concerns about it. I've even invited her to come to my home and listen, during rush hour, so she could actually hear what I'm hearing. I'm on Ortega, and so it's very, very loud.
She could probably come to any home in Los Ranchos.
Well, probably. Okay. I'm sorry, I interrupted you.
No, not at all. I see this informal discussion as not just trustee Benavides, trustee Kiefer, trustee Radnovich, but a discussion.
Sure. The other thing I wanted to bring up was in regard to what we talked about with Vineyard. I've been talking with Barbara Baca, who is the commissioner for this area, county commissioner. And in fact, I've got to get back to her because she's collecting information for me on what the plan is for that project on Vineyard. Okay? And as soon as I get that, I'll certainly get it out to everybody. So that there's a project that is, well, let me backtrack. Land was purchased by the county on Vineyard. It's 1.1 acres right behind Sonic.
Right.
1.1 acres does not provide enough opportunity for anything, basically. Only way to do it is to go up.
Yep.
And so I think people are concerned about that. I'm concerned about it. And I've been talking to her about it, and she's going to, get me some additional information about what the plan is. So, and as soon as I get that, I will certainly share that with everybody.
Yeah.
Okay?
I wish I could come on the 28th. I'll be out of town.
Okay, so with that being said, let me call for adjournment. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Is there a second?
Yes.
Let's do it. Okay, thank you all very much. Meeting is ending at 9:03.
Nice.